I recently got my electrical certificate program from the NMRA Achievement Program. And I'm going to talk a little bit about earning the certificate with a small layout. Come on now, what's going on here? Oops, here we go. The requirements for the certificate really are the sort of things a model railroad electrician should be able to handle. Probably enough elements are present in a basement or even a room-size layout to allow you to get your certificate. But what if your railroads are smaller? This presentation works best if you have a copy of the NMRA document in hand, and only some of the requirements are going to be mentioned today. Basically, you don't need to be an electrical engineer to earn the certificate. I'm certainly not. And interestingly, some familiarity with proposals might help. You can think of the NMRA requirements as a request for proposal. Your submittal is a proposal that must meet those requirements, just like in contracting for the government. I have two layouts. I have a 3-track by 6 foot. It's unremarkable in all respects, other than working overhead wire on my 4th attempt and first success. I humbly believe I know everything you can do wrong in stringing overhead wire because I must have done it. I also have a 4x6, the Crooked Creek and Cimarron. It's adopted. It's a 4x6, and it has all sorts of things about it that I've never been able to get to work well. Brass track, fiber ties, power routing through turnout points. These layouts are really too small to qualify for the Golden Spike. No ballast. Keith Stillman used to say ballasting is the process of taking properly working track and wrecking it. And also, there are no structures on the railroads. And how would I find space for 5 structures on the CCC? Bob Reid taught me a way of thinking about getting your certificate. On his former railroad down in Solomon's Island, there's a 90-degree crossing on a logging branch. The crossing track went from the back wall to the front edge of the layout. So we're talking basically about 18 inches of track. So, in terms of trains going on and crossing the logging line, there wasn't much action. The reason this crossover was there was so that he could earn his civil engineering certificate. What I discovered is on small layouts, you may need to add things, or you could build a separate diorama. Requirement A1 says you got to demonstrate independent control of 5 blocks. Now, a small railroad needs small trains. So my favorite tool for this is the Bachmann Brill trolley. The single unit is a valid train. All wheels collect current, which means it really runs very nicely. And it's double-ended, so there's no problem with the train going in the wrong direction. In order to get the 5 blocks on the CCC, I count the main line and 4 sidings to get to my 5 blocks. They also want a passing siding. Now, there was no room for a passing siding on the CCC. Now, the 3 tracks, the 3-track railroad is 3 parallel tracks, which is ideal, except I'd never done that. So I had to add a second crossover to create the passing siding. And worse yet, since the railroad itself had overhead wire, I had overhead wire for the new crossover. Okay, question here. Can anybody tell me what this is?
Reversing loop.
Okay. Any other guesses? Okay.
A short circuit.
Okay, yes, right. In terms of two rail wiring, what that is a short circuit. There are three classes of this. The loop, which we saw, a Y, and a turntable. The essence of them is that they all end up with confusion about the business of what's the north rail and the south rail. and this requirement wants you to be able to deal with those. Now they also have a transfer table in there, and I don't know why that's there, because it doesn't really have anything to do with the confusion of north and south rail. They're certainly the first two create you with essentially a Mobius strip kind of track where the north rail becomes the south rail, and of course that's the short circuit. In thinking about how to achieve this, I went back to John Armstrong's track planning book, and he has this concept of a square. This is an area big enough for a quarter circle of track. And on 3-track, there are no squares, so we're really done there. The CCC has 6 squares. Well, what will fit? A loop is going to take 4 squares. A Y is going to take 2 squares plus the tail tracks. A turntable takes less than 1 square, so it was really the only thing that I could use to get after this requirement. So I got an Atlas turntable off the internet, off eBay, and shoehorned it in, as you can see here. And there the Brill trolleys happily running around with it. They also want you to demonstrate momentum and a circuit breaker. The good news is that the high-end Metal Rectifier Corporation power packs have these capabilities, and here you see the one I used with its circuit breaker light on. It suffered a short circuit, probably because I had a wire clip between the 2 rails. They also want you to demonstrate a spring switch. Conveniently, the 3-track railroad had all these Atlas switch machines, and the throw wire on the switch machines is soft enough that you can run through the switch the wrong way and get the spring switch effect. They wanted me to demonstrate turnout position indication. Now for the CCC, the 4x6, the switches mostly are controlled by twin coil switch machines, which have a circuit that you could use for that. Unfortunately, I'd already given that away for powering the frogs, because the business of powering the frogs for the points didn't work worth a darn. Now 3-track already had two things that indicated turnout position, and the requirement says you need to show 4 of them. So went back to eBay. There are two products that are good for this. There's Tower Engineering T600 and T602. One is just lights on the switch machine. The other is an actual thing that looks like a signal. And here they both are. When I had initially seen the signal things on eBay, I thought they looked too big and clunky, but actually on the railroad, well, I think they look okay. Now, one of the things that checked off a lot of boxes for me was the operating overhead wire on 3-track. As you can see, I check off 3 requirements with that. But I would caution you to say that working overhead wire is not a shortcut to anything. It's a great deal of trouble. As I say, the working overhead wire on 3-track is my 4th attempt and first success. So unless you're already disposed to go down that road, I wouldn't do it. So let's see what next. Oops, got too far. Here we are. Okay. Towards the end of the NMRA document, there's a number of possible things you can do that involved complicated circuits. And the important thing to note for this is that for all of these possible requirements, what you need to do is build yourself your own circuit. Commercially assembled complete units are not acceptable. I was all set when I first read over these requirements to put a flasher, a commercial flasher I already had bought years ago on a locomotive. But I then read more carefully and noticed that the thing I had was not acceptable, so I didn't try that. And I want to caution you about this business of building your own circuit. The first point I would make is that every published circuit diagram I've ever seen in a modeling magazine has been followed a month or two later with a correction to the circuit. Apparently, anytime a circuit gets drawn up, a fatal wiring error is included. So my caution to you would be that if you're going to attack one of these things, do you have the resources to debug the circuit you're trying to build? Now, I got as far as assembling all sorts of parts to build my very own locomotive flasher light, but then mercifully discovered that I had enough things ticked off that it didn't need to do this. But I've still got all the components in the circuit diagram, which, as I say, I make no guarantees for. If anybody wants all that crap, let me know and I'll be glad to gift you with it. The certification ceremony had a little bit of a problem. The first time I thought that Matt and Pete were coming to the house, I got a call, and the news was that these two retired guys both have dead cars in their driveways, so they couldn't come to my house. So we rescheduled the review. So what happened was there was 3 weeks between when I thought they were going to come and see what I had to show them and when they actually showed up. And during these 3 weeks, we were out of town for a period, and basically both of the layouts sat completely untouched for those 3 weeks. Now, one might think disaster, that nothing would work because everything was all corroded over and a mess. But it turns out that both layouts performed flawlessly. And I attribute this to a new track cleaning idea that Dale Latham put me onto. Basically, you clean the track with low order mineral spirits, which is available for Home Depot, and you apply this magic the greasy elixir from from Sancho, I guess it's called. I got mine off eBay, to the rails. This thing has changed my life. Dirty track has stopped being a problem. And as you might imagine, if you're starting out with brass track, it's always good. You would think it would always plague you, but it's really just not a big deal with this approach. The video explains why this all works, and basically their idea is that a lot of the techniques we've been using all these years involve materials that either mess up things so that the rails attract gunk, or provide chemicals that produce the gunk that we don't want on the rails. I've got PDFs both of my the thing I submitted for the certificate and these slides up on my website. I will toss these things into the chat as well as the link for the track cleaning once I'm done showing the slides. Finally, I want to thank the people who made all this possible. Pete LaGuardia and Matt Thompson came and reviewed my work and approved it. Dale Latham taught me this trick about how to keep the track clean basically endlessly. Bob Reid taught me, as I say, that on a small layout, you may have to add stuff. And James Osmer is the guy who originally built the CCC. And I'm very grateful to him. I've had a great deal of fun with him. Questions? I think everybody's muted, so I probably can't hear them if there are.
Hi, William. This is Greg. I don't have any
Awesome.
questions. I think you covered everything that I had looked at. When it came to preparing the schematic drawings, I built my layout 25 years ago, and
Yeah.
I don't have them anymore. But did you have to go back and relearn what you had done or what was done to it?
Well, yes. And indeed, that's an area I perhaps should have mentioned in the presentation. What I keep hoping and wishing I could find is a drawing tool that's free and that allows you to put together circuit diagrams quickly and easily. I have not found that tool, and asking around, nobody has identified what that tool is. And there's, so for instance, what the symbols to put in the diagrams are troublesome, things like that. I got an idea here. Let me close this down. Let me get out of, how do I get out of this now? Okay. Okay, let me see here. Okay. Ooh. Oh, maybe I can do what I said. Give me just a sec here. Okay, what do we got here? Oh, no, yeah, that doesn't work. Okay. Oh, here we are. All right, let's share. Share screen. Yeah, let's do this. Yeah. Okay, here's can people see this? Well,
Yes.
what I've got here is my attempt at a circuit diagram for the Atlas turntable. This was done very crudely and very laboriously with paint. Let's see what else I got like that. There's a picture of my the 3-track railroad, again done with paint. Let's see if I got it here. Okay. Here's a schematic or a picture of the track diagram of the 4x6, again done with paint. And I've marked things like where the insulated rail joinings are, and I've numbered the switches. All very laboriously and inconveniently done. Here's a picture of the wiring for the overhead wire. Again, all laboriously done with paint. Okay, wiring for the twin coil machines, and the double slip switch. Yeah, and the lights, and all of this is laboriously done with paint and with clip art snatched from wherever I could find it, and dropped into the paint palette. So I'd have to say that the circuit diagrams were a real pain in the neck, and I don't have a good answer.
Well, I had originally thought, and I may still just do it by hand, where I, draw the layout and put in all of the insulators and the reverse loop and things like that. But I will probably have to look up a lot of, as you say, electrical symbols and stuff. I noticed it looks like you put some of your things next to a photo showing it. Well, if that's beneficial, maybe instead of drawing one big layout diagram, I could do small sections like that.
Yeah, I mean, the deal. Oh, okay. I should explain what's going on here. With my 3-track road, I have the capability of running things from either overhead or from the tracks. And if your equipment is rigged the right way, you can actually run 2 trains concurrently. And the patch panel here allows you to connect a power pack to either the track on the far right, the north rail and the overhead wire, or the south rail and the overhead wire. And you can use any 2 of those sockets and run 2 different power packs, and control 2 different trains.
Wow.
But how to explain that, I thought was kind of tricky, but I'm kind of pleased with what I ended up with.
Yeah, using the photo representations really does make it clear. I suppose to an electrical engineer, there's an easy way to show that on a diagram, but it may not be as clear to somebody who isn't one.
Yeah, to not get too technical, but at one point at one job, I had a drawing program that was absolutely wonderful. And the reason it was wonderful was that it was what you call object oriented. Let me explain. In paint, you can set it up to make a box, okay? And you can draw the box, however size you want. You can fiddle with it any way you want. And then you click something, and this thing has stopped being a box. And it's now a bunch of 1s and 0s somewhere on a computer file. And you can't do anything further with it. You're just stuck with how it is. The object-oriented tool, you put a box, it was like for drawing flowcharts. And you put a box down, and it retains its boxness for the life of the document, so that you can, for instance, come by later and click on the box and say, you really ought to be a diamond. And it would flip to be a diamond. In addition, if you had lines connecting boxes, you could pull the box and the lines would rubber band and stuff like that. That is the tool I would like to have for doing wiring like this. And I'd like a bunch of buttons to hit the circuit things like coils and switches and lights and all that crap. But I'm sure such a tool exists, but it may be that it costs hundreds of dollars. No one has identified a free one to me. And it may be that your plan of just drawing it by hand is the way to go. If you've ever seen my signature, you'd know that you don't want me to try that. Excellent question, though. I'm glad you mentioned it. Other questions? Well, let me then do a couple of things here. Where was I? Here I am. Okay. Okay, yeah. I'm going to go over to chat here. Where's chat? Why don't we have chat? There's chat. All right. Okay, I've just put the stuff for the track cleaning thing out on the chat, since I didn't figure that anybody memorized the that URL. Now I'm going to put out the URLs for the other stuff, the slides for this presentation, and the paperwork I actually submitted. Any other questions, thoughts, complaints? Most of your bless your hearts are muted, so to say something, you're gonna have to unmute.
Bill, if people want to see other examples of diagrams submitted as part of the electrical AP, I'd be more willing to put mine up and let them take a look. I've got my full submission I can show you all if you want to see it. The diagrams were created with nothing but Microsoft Word.
Ah,
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that because I think that's going to be probably take me the most time in getting this whole thing together.
Okay,
I
let me
would
see if I can.
I would not disagree. As I say, I found it to be a fairly time-consuming part of the enterprise.
Okay, let me see if I can find it here now. I had it. There it is. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put it over here. Okay, Bill, if you're not sharing,
I believe I've stopped.
okay, I'm gonna try to do this. See if I can pull this up here. I think I can. Can you all see that?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
read you 5 by 5.
Okay, so this is the summation I submitted, and I was fortunate my first submission of getting everything to go through. Matt, once again, was very helpful to me, as well as Pete LaGuardia. And all I did was take the requirements that I saw at the time. This is back in 2013, I think, and just gave him a little introduction of my my layout. That'd be a stick diagram of the layout itself. Once again, this is created with Word. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit better for you there. Talked about the power, described that. This is a diagram of how everything gets from the 110 volt out to the track. And once again, this is made with Microsoft Word, nothing, no CAD in my house here. Talked about my power gaps, and we should see, yeah, there's my layout at the time. It's changed drastically now. It's a second level, but identified my power gaps. This is a bridge over here that goes up and down, so we had to have power gaps. And there's also some switches in here
That's by the doorway.
yeah, exactly. And then there's power gaps over here because in this area right here, believe it or not, there's actually a way to reverse a locomotive by pulling in and coming back out. You come in here and come back out and reverse your locomotive. That was I don't have a turntable. That when we looked at it, there was a question, but that was determined to be a reversing, not a loop, but a reversing yard, if you will.
Yes.
So that worked out. And with that, there's a switch that gets thrown over here that changes the power, because if you think about the AB thing and A and B being on the left and right here, when we go around the loop, things change and it's ABBA, so we have to flip it. So there's a DP-DT switch in there that throws it, but you can put an auto reverser in. Talked about the LocoNet, and I just borrowed images off the internet for that. These are the local net connection points that I have in the layout at the time. Talked about my cab controls. I'm on Digitrax. Then I had a passing sighting, so I talked about the passing sighting, how it was there. And over there, I was talking about that lift out bridge, or the bridge. This is on the bridge itself. Then I've got the power gaps going into my locomotive facility, and these were installed so that I could kill the power to each one of these tracks. So the power comes in here, but there's a switch for each leg that allows you to be able to turn things on and off. So you can store your locomotives and are not borrowing power over there, especially with the sound locomotives. And just straightforward with the typical tortoise motor power. Then a wiring of a DP-DT with a tortoise motor. Then my mainline track that had a tortoise motor, and this was a crossover that we're throwing two switches with the same electrical switch, if you will. There's once again the wiring diagram. Now we got a little crossover there. We had to have some isolated frogs so we didn't get the short once again with the ABBA thing going on. It gives you a little bit of an idea. Wiring up my tortoise motors have LEDs installed on them. This is showing a red green LED, and actually my LEDs are, depending upon how the polarity is, it's either red or green. You don't have to have separate. Be wired in a similar fashion. This is my propulsion, as I called it, circuitry, but just basically how the power gets onto the track and the various loco net connection points. I'm not trying to steal your clinic here at all, Bill. I'm just.
On the contrary, I think this is great. Is a great demonstration of the challenges.
Mine has a ramp meter, so I tried to show the how the ramp meter was installed between the main line and such. So it gives you an idea, and it's not rocket science stuff. It's very straightforward. You got the main bus going up through. For the other power, the tortoises, how they're connected through. And just the switch, power gaps, feeders, and power supplies. Like I say, this really have to redo this because my layout has that second layer now, and I've also got an area up in here where this takes off and goes up to the second level, and there's a Y over here now that has a auto reverse in it. And I've also installed circuit breakers since that day. The PSX type, that was a challenge for me anyhow, because I didn't understand something, but thanks to Pete LaGuardia and Bob Rodriguez, we got that fixed up. And George Merrick had a lot to help me out there too. He's kept me straight. So just listing the things that were in there, and then the command and receiver itself. And that's just putting a decoder into a locomotive. And how I did it. So that's what my stuff looked like, and it's 29 pages, a lot of stuff, probably a lot more than needs to be. One of the things I'll say is anytime you're dealing with judges, you want to give them the information they need, not try to overload them, because they don't want to sit there and read 29 pages. This is when I was still learning about. I thought it was necessary to show them everything, so I'll stop sharing here, and it's back to you, Bill.
Well, one point that Matt made to me about this stuff is that they want enough material that when it gets sent on to the next layer of the bureaucracy, the people there can look at the submitted document and see that, yeah, you really did show what you said you did. So certainly your presentation is quite detailed, but I'd be hard pressed to say that it was too detailed.
I appreciate that. But you know, and one other thing on the judging and the amount of material you're putting, you make sure that as you're going through the list, if it calls for something, make sure that what's being called out is what you're showing, and that's the bottom line. And I'll deviate for a second. If you're going to deal with cars or something like that, don't show 3 pictures of 3 different cars, even though it's the same car, but you've got one that might be a resin kit, and you've got one that might be I don't know, a scratch built kit, and you got a picture of the prototype. Those 3 pictures don't agree. That's going to drive the judges nuts. They don't know what to grade. So be careful on what you provide. And in the case, it's too much information, if you will. I always use the.
You're exactly right. I almost got in trouble supplying documentation for a station I built for my structures, and the floor plan showed a door at one end, but when the station was actually built, the door wasn't put in. They put in 2 windows. I had a picture of the station and the floor plan, but the fact that what I built didn't match the floor plan, it counted off a little. So they said, next time, don't put in the floor plan if it doesn't match.
Yeah, everything just has to flow and look like so they know what you're doing and what you build it to, and that's the bottom. If you do deviate, let them know you deviated for whatever reason. And I think you do have some, I guess, ability to deviate from the standard, but you got to be able to justify it. Just because I didn't want to do that, that's not going to be a good enough thing.
Any other thoughts, concerns, ideas?
Now, I think this answered all the questions I had, and I think it's now just a matter of doing the paperwork and like you, cleaning my track so I can show it all operating.
Well, the good thing is some things have changed a little bit through the way, and once again, I'm going to deviate for a second. In the civil, there was a time where you had to build and all this kind of thing, you know, three different things and all those things, and now if you can show it, it doesn't necessarily have to be complete, if you will. They relaxed the requirements a little bit in the civil category, and I've got to go through that again myself to verify it, since I'm sure that with the change in our AP chair, there's probably have to some more judging I'm going to have to do. I don't like doing the judging, but as an MMR, you're supposed to be able to do that kind of stuff, and I just need to learn the standard. And once again, Bill, I don't know if you said this or not, but before you start any of these AP certificate challenges, if you will, read the requirements and make sure you understand them, so you don't go down the highway and hit a wrong exit ramp or end up in Portland, Maine versus Portland, Oregon. That'd be a bad thing to have happen, which you know, sometimes that's what happens. People don't understand the requirements and didn't read them, and becomes judging time, and all of a sudden there's a lot of upset people because, well, they didn't know the requirements. And they are right there on the NMRA's achievement page. And I had posted the link to the electrical page earlier on. I think the very first chat item was that. But knowing the requirements that you're trying to meet, it's always good. It gives you also an opportunity to plan how you're going to go about doing it. And Bill had to think a little bit about with the small layout, how he was going to get to show the electrical things versus it being a gigantic, 1,000 by 1,500 layout. So you have to have an idea of how to deal with the small layout. It don't take a big layout to be able to meet the requirements. It's just knowing what the requirements are and understanding. And the AP chair, one of the other MMRs, is always available. If you have questions and ask questions, I think it'll get rid of a lot of frustration for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I showed drafts of what I was building to Matt, and that was very helpful in figuring out what I needed to do. Kurt Thompson always says, "Don't overthink this stuff," and I think that's good advice as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't read between the lines and don't make a mountain out of a molehill, if you will. It's sometimes we do that because we just misinterpret things versus communication, and that's like you just said, that's a big thing on any of these challenges of the AP program itself.
I had never even looked at this until I saw the email about this clinic and printed out the requirements. So I'm a complete neophyte on this stuff. But one thing I saw in reading the requirements, it certainly seemed it was more oriented toward DC than DCC. And I'm just kind of wondering, has it says, things about, nothing should preclude use of a more advanced system. But things like cutting power to individual tracks, you turn off the locomotive and, and it's off. I mean, yeah, turn off the sound, turn off the power, and as opposed to cutting off the power to every individual track. That's one of the things about DCC. I've got 3 power districts and 4 reverse loops and a turntable. They're all controlled by an automatic reverser. The only hard part's figuring out where to put the gaps, especially now that they've gone to more metal wheel cars than they used to have. Back when it was all micro trains, was all plastic wheels. All you needed was the length of the locomotives. But now with metal wheel cars, you need the length of the whole train. But things like that, I don't see that, the applicability of some of the standards in here to DCC as opposed to DC.
I think Ernie is in a better position to speak to this than me, because I don't have any DCC here in the house. I have a throttle that I take to operating sessions, but my guess though was that a number of the things you could take off with DCC, like the stuff that I dealt with that model rectifier, fancy power pack, I think you could also pick up with DCC.
Well, yeah, but you mentioned that the model rectifier power pack with having momentum and all that. You don't have that in DCC. It's in the decoder.
Yeah.
It's not in the power pack. It's in the decoder.
You're programming the decoder, right?
And that's my point, is that you can then take those off with the DCC system, I would suspect.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking at that saying, momentum is great, but it's in the decoder.
Yeah.
And things like installing decoders. It says, plug and play decoders. No. Well, I've hardwired 25 decoders. Does that count?
My hat is off to you. I just recently attempted,
in N-scale 25 decoders hardwired.
I recently attempted to do one of these things in HO and vowed that from now on I'm going to buy pre-installed.
Yeah, I made a lot of conversions of the old Atherans that were DC, and then having to cut the wire and isolate the motor and install the decoder. That's probably, I did my first 5 or 6 locomotives I had. They were all conversions versus now taking the board out and putting the board in. And that's before I learned about DCC and the programming of the decoders through GMRA's Decoder Pro or other programs similar to that. But those were always challenges. But to answer your question, about the DC and the DCC thing, if you really practically think about it, looking at the requirements in the NMRA's electrical requirement document, there's a lot of things there that are done in DC that happen in DCC also. I understand shutting the power on and off, is something that you could have discussions on. But when I was doing some of this, I started out in DC and converted to DCC probably within the first 6 months of my railroad. And I was challenged by a lot of the stuff, and the DCC side scared the dickens out of me, but I'm getting a little more confident with it, even though sometimes some strange things happen, and I had to call my friends to see what's going on. I was going to talk for a moment, if it's okay, Bill, about my
Well,
my
let me
experience.
let me
Go
just
ahead.
bust in a sec here.
Sure.
John has posted a link to an open source circuit design alternative tool. And it's out on the chat if that's of interest to you. And I certainly snapped a picture of it. Go look there for it. Go ahead, Ernie.
I was going to say, when I put my circuit breakers in here recently, my layout being 2 levels and basically in 3 sections, if you will, I had it all in one power district.
Hmm.
And my feeds were, I had a bus wire running the entire length with feeders going up to the track, but I didn't have it split into power districts itself. And if you recall, I said I had a lift out bridge in that lower level, and there's a lift out bridge on the second level to get by my furnace room, because I'm not good at ducking under anymore, and I can't jump over it either. It just doesn't work. I tried the Superman thing and it didn't work either. But the bottom line was I split it such that my furnace room door was District 1 to the left, District 2 to the right. And once I got my circuit breakers installed on District 2, I was telling you about that Y that has that automatic reverser in it. As soon as I got into that automatic reverser, my locomotive would stop, sit there and think for a minute, and go again. And what was happening? I was tripping the circuit breaker on the PSX power shield that I have. And that reverser is also a project, and both those products were made by Tony's Trains up there, whatever they call themselves these days. But the bottom line was they had to take the PSX and increase the trip level of the circuit breaker so it was higher than the trip level of the auto reverser that had a circuit breaker within itself. And what's happening was hitting that auto reverse, and the auto reverser was doing its thing. As soon as it changed it, the PSX was saying there's a short, bam, and it was set at 2 amps at the time, and I had to set it at 3 amps. Once we did that, it was a piece of cake, but it wasn't clear to me. But I did email Tony's Train Exchange, and they told me what I needed to do. I just had to get Bob Rodriguez to come in and show me how to do it with my throttle on the Digitrax. And basically what happened was the circuit breaker was assigned an address, and I went into that address and was able to change a couple of CVs in there. It tells you what CVs to change, and that's how you can change the level, the trip level, and also you have to move a jumper from one point to another point to be able to program and then put it back. So those instructions were a little confusing to me with what came in the package, and for about 2 days I was trying to figure out what was wrong. And when I talked with Bob and Pete and those guys, they indicated, and Bob came by and we fixed it in about maybe 15 minutes, just moving that jumper and then assigning that address with the throttle and changing those 2 CVs, and it was a done deal. It works like a champ now. I was worried that I wasn't going to have 2 power districts for a while, but it worked.
Bill, I thought of another question I have that you may not have run into it when you're actually demonstrating the operation of the layout to the evaluators. Does everything have to work flawlessly? What I mean by that, I have 1, maybe 2 turnouts that as you throw it, there's a momentary beep in the system because over the years it developed a short, and I guess like a squeaky door, I've learned to live with it. As long as it works in the end, does that matter?
I think that would be no problem. Remember, the people you're dealing with are model railroaders just like you, with railroads just like yours. So I think that wouldn't be a problem.
In my opinion, Bill, is that, I think our locomotives have those hiccups, and whether that be dirty track, or some other little glitchy thing, as long as that locomotive will pick it back up and it's not a dead short that puts your system down, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and it's always one of those things that you can say, well, that's something that you should improve because in the long run you'll enjoy your layout better. Well, one of the turnouts that, call it short, it would require lots of work to fix that, and I hardly ever use it. So, but if I had to show it working, there's going to be a little beep.
Well, that's a good point. And the thing is, some of your turnouts have isolated frogs and some don't. And that's going to create, if it's not isolated, that could create what you're talking about, Greg. At least that's my opinion from what I saw. And that was another change I had to make on my layout downstairs. I had to cut an isolation point into that Y at a certain point. And it talks about, whether you're going to cut both rails or one rail, and I cut both rails. But if you're going to do that, then you have to think about when the locomotive's going through, well, those cuts, they have to be right across from each other, or can they be offset and that kind of thing? That's something you just have to think about a little bit. And those metal wheel sets we're running today are definitely
this would have been so much easier to have applied for this AP a year or two after I built a layout, when I remembered everything I did and knew what I did, instead of now. It's almost 24 years old. And I have to go back and remember a lot of that stuff, or find where I did it and how I did it.
And Greg, I'm going to cut Bill off there for a second. That's a good point. Document what you're doing as you're doing it. And that saved me, because I documented the crap out of everything I did. But when I went back to do it, and you have people such as yourself that did it 20 years ago, and if I can remember 5 minutes ago, I'm doing good. So the documentation as you go is a big thing, and take plenty of pictures.
Yeah, I do think I have the sheet where I had all my planned electronics. I don't know if I followed it or not.
Oh.
That was part of my challenge, was I didn't have a plan. I was just throwing track down because I just wanted to run trains when I first started. Then I learned I should have had a plan.
A couple of thoughts here. On the CCC, at one point early in my ownership of it, one of the switches completely disintegrated. It's a Shinohara number 6. And so I went to Timonium, and after stopping at many booths, I found a Shinohara number 6, as I wanted the same geometry so as to simplify the change out. And I found one and took it home and put it in. But it is the one piece of nickel silver rail in the whole railroad. And I'm not pleased with that outcome. But I'm more pleased with that outcome than having no switch there, and therefore having a gap in the railroad. Well, Ernie, I think we should declare this a success, and thank everybody for coming.
Well, I'm glad that the people showed up. That was great. I'm going to throw a link on the chat here. That is the website for my layout, Norfolk Southern connector. It's on Weebly. And if you go to that website, I have a page that has all my AP stuff on it that shows all the submissions, whether it be electrical, civil, and whatever. If you want to see what I did, and what you see there is what I submitted to the AP judging team of Matt and the guys, and went up through region and such. So it's there for the taking if you like it. If you have any questions, all you gotta do is contact Super at Potomac NMRA.org, and I'd be more glad to try to answer any questions with that. But Bill, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your schedule, and thank you all for being patient with us getting online here with the issues that I created by not making sure that link was out there. So we got some folks here anyhow, and appreciate it. We'll be back next month with Brian Sharon talking about consider operations. And one other thing that's coming up in September, you've probably seen it on the website, but we're going to have a little excursion down to the Burnt Tree Industrial Railroad, and of all places, Aurora, Virginia, and that's a little bit below Madison off Route 29. But it's a railroad that you can ride, though the car's not the biggest thing in the world. But it's interesting. Chris has 2,800 feet of track down there on his farm that he has there, and he has graciously allowed us to come down once, and then we got a second time. I think it's September 16th on a Saturday. But it's on the website, and you can see some other information about it, see some pictures of it. But it's a 1/8 scale, 12.5 inch, I think, in width for the track, and it's all powered by batteries and electric motors. But he actually allows us to do some operations down there, which the people who run their trains on the track down there didn't know what operations were, and it took us model railroaders to show them what operations was all about. They didn't think about switching cars with those trains they have, but it's pretty interesting. And I've been down there once, saw it, enjoyed it. So that's September 16th. The information is on the website if you are interested. Just let me know. And Bill, other than that, thank you again, and thank you all for being patient. And if nobody else has any questions, we'll call it a day.